Okay, I don't know if this is working. We're trying to figure it out. Hello? Interesting. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. You get to see the top of my head. It's super confusing. This is very unusual. Huh, maybe it is working. Okay, hold on. I am trying to figure out if this is working for real. Live. Yeah, okay, there does seem to be a stream here. I have no idea how to really configure it, but we will find out. Let's see. Huh. Okay. Appears to be that I am live. I am checking out to see if this is actually working correctly because it might not be. And I had this whole like little thing all set up and now I lost it. It's trying to be smart and it's not working for me. Hello, everyone. We're trying a completely different way of doing this because the last time didn't really work. So this is my hope that this is going to work. I don't actually know if it is, but we try our best here. Um, and yeah, we just try our best. That's pretty much all I can say. So, welcome back to another episode. I was halfway through something and now I am, I don't know, actually conscious. Okay, so now you understand why I've actually been taking a little bit of time before starting this up again because oops, hold on. Something is going wrong. Okay, so I am going to try now. I'm trying with Zoom. So rather than using the native kind of tool that whatchamacallit's hello YouTube gives me. So for the longest time, just to give you a very, very quick background, and then we'll get back into the paper. Hopefully you will follow along here and you will be able to. I am still trying to understand how I am able to view live in control room. Okay, maybe I can do this. Okay, so I'm trying to understand how all this works. Here we go. Ah, I got it. Okay, well, kind of. So I, for the longest time, was using kind of a free version of StreamYard because to me, all of this was a test to see if this, it's not the normal thing for somebody of what I do to do like live commentary in this way. And I have to admit, I'm kind of at a point where I realize that it's like either go in or go out. Like either I have to go all in and I have to just sit down, figure out all the streaming software stuff, do all the things that are relating to streaming software, but maybe this is actually going to work. Maybe the idea of using, maybe I was trying to do this all differently and I was kind of focusing on trying to get other tools to like use the YouTube native tools when in reality I have Zoom streams. I probably could even stream this to no, I can't. I thought I could at the same time, but I can stream it. So why don't I just stream it here and then try it and see if this works and work on it and stuff like that. So we're going to test. We're going to do this test. We're going to continue on. So just for those of you that don't know where the heck we were or what we were doing or what the hell is going on, welcome. Go back and listen to part one. I'm going to relabel it. I will see. Actually, I'll do this while we're talking. Because there is a part one now and this is part two and hopefully it will like, give the title. So I'm just going to put like part thinker part one. Thank you for bearing along with me because this is all kind of acting so weird. So this is part two. And it doesn't even give you the right title. I'm so confused. Okay. So this is part two. Okay. So hopefully now you should see in here a part one and a part two. I'm praying to God this is working. Yes. Okay. This seems to be working. All right. So let me go back and explain. I was streaming. We are listening to the keynote by Michael Marder. We're about halfway through his keynote for the Thinking with Plants and Fungi conference, where Michael Marder is talking specifically about Emily Dickinson and the poetry of Emily Dickinson and how that relates to her self-vegetalization. So go back to part one. It actually is a pretty good live stream up until the time when everything went dead, which I actually don't know how far back it is. So I am going to go back a little bit. So if you came over from over there, I don't know where it left off over there. So I'm just going to start at the beginning of like part two over there because I'm going to start from like his section two where he starts to talk about Emily Dickinson's self-vegetalization because they're kind of distinct sections where he starts with her work, her experience creating a herbarium, not so much from a scientific perspective, but from a personal relationship perspective, and her vegetalization in the process. Now, I was mentioning in the first part of the stream that we read Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life as a book inside the Plant Wisdom Book Club, and that I was so appreciative of reading it with the group because I am not necessarily 100% a poetry person. I love the concept of poetry. I respect poetry, but I don't always understand poetry, just to be fair. And so I really liked the way that in a group we were able to better understand Emily's vegetalization because we kind of came to the same conclusions that Emily really has in her life kind of reached in her life, she reached this point of almost being vegetalized in the way that she looks at the world. So, with that being said, Michael is just getting to that point. So, hopefully, I mean, I know how to share screen with audio better in Zoom. So, hopefully, this is going to work. Share sound, and we're off to the races. And hopefully, this is going to work correctly. Beautiful. So hopefully this is working. It looks like it is. And let's try
We're
playing.
talking about the substitution or identification of Emily for or with flowers. I would argue that her practice is a practice of self-vegetalization, which is actually a practice of rendering herself other or refinding that alterity that is already within the human.
So I just want to state because Michael tends to use this terminology of other, of making himself of other. And I just want to state because it's pretty much what we call plantness. I think he says other and he says other, I think, because he's trying not to only focus it on plantness, where of course, because we're working mainly with plantness, that's what we're focusing on. But in reality, we're saying the exact same thing, right? He's talking about this otherness as the main element of which, in this case, Emily Dickinson is like her non-humanness. So rather than saying non-humanness, he focuses on otherness, which is pretty much the same thing. We just happen to focus it more on plantness. So in our kind of vernacular, we do very much talk about Emily Dickinson's plantness, or not just Emily Dickinson, our own. Like we think about our animalness, our human animalness, and how those two, where are they the same and where are they not? Our instinctual level, our point of moving, our part of like doing things in a certain way, where our plantness is really that centering, that stepping out of the human logic, the human conditioning, stepping even out of our animalness and into our body in a very completely different way, in a way where body as sensor, body as awareness, body as presence. And I love that he does focus a lot of his work on that otherness and how important, which he states at the beginning, and you can hear it in part one of this, that how important it is for us to really kind of live that otherness and how to not compare plantness or how to not compare plants to humans, but really to just step into that otherness as a category or as a way of being in and of itself. And so I just wanted to state that because I really enjoy this thinking process. And I get that he's just using otherness because he's not necessarily always talking about plants. And we just use plantness because we're specifically talking about that element inside of ourselves that is the vegetal within, right? The evolutionary vegetal that lives within me.
Does not really allow us to know who or what we are, regardless of all of our delusions to the contrary. Many among Emily Dickinson's early poems speak from the standpoint of the plants themselves, notably of flowers, about the redemptive reversal or suspension of time, immanent and imminent in the fine-grained materiality of this temporality. To be sure, Emily does not usurp the position of plants. Rather, she painstakingly vegetalizes herself in gardening as much as in poetizing, in the making of herbaria as much as in her epistolary practice. If she expresses her feelings in terms of flowers and gardening, as one critic says, it is because her feelings have become vegetal. That is also why, from an anthropocentric perspective, her thinking appears incoherent.
Exactly.
As another critic notes, and I quote, in other Dickinson poems, we find that thought has lost not only existential mastery of sequence, but also cognitive dominion over sense perception. Perception simply crowd in too thick and fast to be arrangeable in a single chromatic sequence, unquote. Right? Now, assuming the non-identity of the anemone flower, Emily writes, I quote, "Summer for thee, grant I may be, when summer days are flown, the music still, when whirlpool and oriole are done, for thee to bloom, I'll skip the tomb and roll my blossoms over. Pray gather me, anemone, thy flower forevermore." This short poem may be read as a kind of manifesto for the practice of creating herbaria, a herbarium manifesto voiced by a plant that is about to be admitted into the collection. From the edge of death, the time of vigorous life is recovered. Anemone Emily, the name of the flower set apart from the rest of the text between dashes, about which I have spoken a little bit, and on a poetic line dedicated just to it, implores to be summer for thee after summer days are flown. Gathered into an herbarium, she will embody time after time, the future of time past. In an herbarium, Anemone Emily defies death. I'll skip the tomb, fluttering between a delicate.
I want to be one of those people that can read a poem like this. I also want to be able to decipher riddles. I don't know how to decipher riddles either. If anybody has any exercises for how is it that one learns how to decipher riddles and like, read poetry, probably if you read a lot of poetry, you're probably really good at riddles. You all tell me if that's true. I think I'm gonna need to ask. I'm gonna ask Nandini and Lori because they're always really good at that. I'm super curious as to if you are somebody who is very good at riddles, does that make you also, I mean, if you're somebody very good at understanding reading and really enjoys poetry, does that make you really good at riddles? I don't know. I don't know.
Infinitely finite life, brittle in its dryness on the one hand, and eternity forevermore on the other. Gathering her, pray gather me, is gathering oneself, and in the same stroke, gathering time from its dispersion into the modalities of past, present, and future, a gathering that will, in its turn, be dispersed, shared with the addressees of flower poems and epistolary fragments of herbaria. Such a gathering does not foreclose death. Departed both, they say, i.e. gathered away. So departed, dispersed is gathered away, right? This is a line, again, from one of her poems. It does not foreclose death, but apportions death otherwise, ridding it of its sting in the process. Now, a plant prepared for inclusion in the herbarium is a stop frame of existence. Here, the ecstasy that is the undefinable essence of flowers is at once glimpsed and slips away from the gaze and the grasp. At best, it is a glimpse of elusiveness itself, glimpsing the limits of the glimpse, an intimation of what George Eliot christens the
Glimpsing the, hold on, I gotta go back to that. I just gotta go back to that.
and the grasp. At best, it is a glimpse of elusiveness itself, glimpsing the limits of the glimpse.
Glimpsing the limits of the glimpse. Glimpsing the limits of the glimpse. I'm mesmerized. I'm mesmerized by that. Glimpsing the limits of the glimpse. Just such a unusual phrase. Like, sorry. Okay. I'm going back and then we can get into it again. Going back one more, so.
Name of existence. Here, the ecstasy that is the undefinable essence of flowers is at once glimpsed and slips away from the gaze and the grasp. At best, it is a glimpse of elusiveness itself, glimpsing the limits of the glimpse, an intimation of what George Eliot christens the soul of visible things that shows silent happiness. The continuation of an afterlife is possible only thanks to a series of discontinuities, the intermittencies of being, punctuated by pauses and lapses, some of them indefinitely long. Hence, another poem here, when roses cease to bloom, sir, and violets are done, when bumblebees in solemn flight have passed beyond the sun, the hand that paused to gather upon the summer's day will idle lie in auburn, then take my flowers, pray. Right? So mirroring the momentary pause of an active hand gathering summer flowers is the totally idle hand of the deceased lying in Auburn. That is, of course, Mount Auburn Cemetery, which Dickinson visited at the age of 16 and called in one of her letters the City of the Dead.
Ah!
Mozzarella vallelata.
Rude. I still don't know. That's the other piece of the Mercury retrograde that I haven't been able to fix, that it just keeps doing this, even though I gotta check my premium. Sorry. Sorry. You just have to deal with it for a second. It's almost done. Now you know what the ads are in Italian. I've never even seen that many of them.
The passage of bumblebees beyond the sun and the end of the violets complete the catalog of disruptions that in one way or another are associated with mortality. Nonetheless, something is passed along despite the passing of flowers, of their pollinators, and of the hand that touched them. Something recommences fitfully, spasmodically, sporadically, as the giving of existence beyond its spatio-temporal edges. Right? There is a giving beyond the capacity to give when the hand already lies idle in Auburn. And in fact, Emily says, this is the only moment of actual giving.
Look how passionate he is. Look how passionate he is. See, this is the part of poetry I love. The passion in the reading between the lines. I just don't know how to read between the lines, man. I'm totally here for it. I'm here for it. I want to learn about it.
When the hand can no longer give anything, when it's already the hand of the deceased. Then take my flowers, praise, an offer from a hand that is no longer vitally active, that cannot give anything in the philosophical, physiological, biological, or behavioral senses of the term. Only this gift of a hand that does not grasp and that does not intend, only this offering of a flower that is on the verge of becoming no longer flower, and that is forevermore a flower in an herbarium, only this offering matters. So much so that it will be the storehouse of the treasure that is the vegetal vitality in the mode of an afterlife. So we'll return to that line now. But so to sum up a little bit what I have been saying thus far, my hypothesis is that the poetic, epistolary, and herbalizing practices of Emily Dickinson are the intersecting and mutually reinforcing experiments in her self-vegetalization. They are motivated neither by the mimesis of plants, nor by an identification with them. In each of these instances, the herbarium would have functioned as a mirror, a speculative instrument for better recognizing oneself, assuming that one has that clearly recognizable identity. Where, transformed as it may be, the human self, if not the self as such, is still retained. Simultaneously allegorical and literal, self-vegetalization is a Wartian paradox, which is a tributary to the paradoxes of vegetal ontology. So let's go back then for a moment to this other poem of Emily Dickinson, where she again speaks about roses, and you don't have.
He has my mind churning. I don't know about you, but my mind is absolutely like this whole concept of self-vegetalization, not as mirror. That's where he got me. Not as mirror, but a self. So she doesn't look at the herbarium as a mirror of herself. but it's almost as if, what is she, vegetalizing parts of herself? Is she the herbarium in and of itself? And with each piece that each plant that is put into the herbarium, is that a way for her to preserve these elements of herself? So it's almost like, the cutting of a lock of your hair as a reminder of who you were at that age and in that moment is each plant that she, delicately takes and presses a way for her to express elements, to capture elements of herself that then, because she doesn't do it in purpose, she shares with others? Huh. Super curious.
The line here, but she starts by saying, nobody knows, our little rose, how easy it is for such as thee to die. And then, yes, you have it here. Nobody knows this little rose, it might a pilgrim be, did I not take it from the ways and lift it up to thee, right? So what I want to focus on are just two words, such as thee, right? Nobody knows, a little rose, how easy for such as thee to die. Two words, such as thee, or such as, ooze with many of the ambiguities of the poet's take on plants and herbaria, the take that lets go of what it plucks, presses, and preserves, and lets go also of itself and its self in the very act of plucking, pressing, and preserving. The rose referred to with the word such as thee is no longer this singular and unique, perhaps unnameable flower whom nobody knows. She becomes, in the poem's closing line, an exemplary case of ease in death. The rose is idealized in the precise philosophical sense of getting unglued from her thisness, growing vaguely universal. Her transition from such as to as such is seamless, from an example such as to as such, the ideality of identity. Despite her genetic rendering, however, the rose is still an addressee, a thee, which indicates another kind of distance than the idealizing such as or as such. And this is not even to mention that such as thee includes the author of these lines, becoming a rose in an herbarium of words and flowers that is in the discontinuous continuity of her pilgrimage through life and death. The rose's ease of dying is similarly paradoxical. This rose dies easily when its blooming time is over, but the rose bush lives on. The practice of deadheading, as those of you who are gardeners know, removing the faded or dead flowers from a plant, stimulates further blossoming. Besides this rose, the one such as thee dies with comparable ease, but the iterations and the iterability of such as, let alone as such, resist death. In a scientific herbarium, the death of a particular singular plant is overcome in the generality of the species it represents as a preserved specimen, such as a rose, which stands for the rose as such. The ease of dying betokens the ease of vanquishing death. Emily Dickinson's poetic herbaria also bet on this loophole, but they do so by means other than the subsumption of the singular in the universal. In other words, she names this idealizing practice by way of resisting idealization. So what is needed for one to die? Apparently a meaningless question, but one that is really bristling with meaning, not least in Dickinson's writings. In I Haven't Told My Garden Yet, it turns out that in lieu of biological vitality and cessation, the prerequisite for dying is a face, or more precisely, having a face. So here's the poem. I haven't told my garden yet, lest that should conquer me. I haven't quite the strength now to break it to the bee. I will not name it in the street, for shops would stare at me. That one so shy, so ignorant, should have the face to die. In the proto-Heideggerian mood, Heidegger was mentioned here in passing earlier, I could say that to have a face is
Because everybody's obsessed with Heidegger. Okay, maybe not everybody, but isn't it is such a great word? So it's I'm not going to get down the Heidegger. Not going
to be
down.
able to
Going
face
down.
death as one's own possibility. Do plants have faces? Do they have a face or faces? It would not be easy. In fact, it would be next to impossible for them to die were they to be bereft of this feature. To overcome death, it would be enough to dispense with the face of the dying one. And yet, the ease of plant death is contingent upon a loose relation of a plant to its faces. A flower, for instance, does not have faces. It does not lay claim to its own finite being as its indisputable first and last possession. A flower does not have faces. It is its faces. The sentient surfaces of petals, leaves, stalks, with which it faces the sun, and the no less sentient faces of the roots in touch with the earth. Plants are all faces, and they do not have a face. Hence, it's all too easy. And
Plants are all faces and they do not have a face. There is just so much to process here. So much, so much, so much to process.
exceptionally difficult for them to die. Conventionally, an herbarium embodies an effort to preserve the faces of plants, to tear them away from death, to put an end to the movements of growth and decay alike. What is then preserved amounts not to faces, not to the faces of plants, but to their death masks. Emily's herbaria do something else altogether. On the one hand, the appearance of jasmine on the first page of the herbarium she made at Amherst Academy may be read in light of the language of flowers, mentioned more than once already today, that was current in the 19th century, where this plant connoted the affairs of the heart, whether passion or separation. On the other hand, according to her poetry, which I see as a more faithful indicator here on the meaning of jasmine for her, right? Jasmine is ecstasy itself, the uncontainable, unleashed just after the threshold of death has been passed. So here's the poem. Kill your balm, and its odors bless you. Bear your jasmine to the storm, and she will fling her maddest perfume, haply your summer night to charm.
Ah! My goodness. My goodness. At least I'm getting this to work. So, what are you thinking so far? I'm very curious as to your thoughts because I am normally very fast to process things, but in this particular case, I got to admit, I am having to process slowly, very, very slowly. Um, yeah, it's taking me a minute to process this. Taking me a minute. Why is that open? So let's get back into it because it's, yeah. Hold on, actually. Sorry. I started. He is going quickly. Hold on 1 second. Oh, why? Close. Close. Tell me you're shut down. Sorry, I had something that was like interrupting my feed and I could not figure out what it was. So I think I just got it. All right. I am having to process this so slow. So I want to say a bunch of words and then no words are coming. But maybe that's the whole point, right? The whole thing we're talking about is about otherness or vegetalization or plantness or whatever word you want to use. And maybe that's the reason why I'm struggling to find the words. And yet I find this incredible amount of strength in, not strength, that's not the right word. I don't know how to describe it. That's the thing about Marder. That's actually the thing about Marder that I both love and like struggle through. I've read several of his papers, his books, and there is this way of entering into something that he seems to find words for, which I don't understand how. I can't find words for. I just feel emotions through it. I feel like it cuts into certain aspects of myself and I don't know where to put it or place it. And actually it's kind of what I like about it. It's kind of what I like about it.
Jasmine to the storm, and she will fling her maddest perfume, haply your summer night to charm. Right? It is after Jasmine is exposed to the storm or even killed that she will fling her maddest perfume in olfactory ecstasy, a trace of Jasmine's non-identity, of her being outside or beside herself. To commence an herbarium this way, right? And
What just happened? Everything froze again. Please don't tell me you did it to me again. Oh, I am so frustrated, Mercury. Is it moving again or am I done? Okay, it seems like I am.
it's really on the first page of the herbarium made.
Okay, hold on. It looks like I'm back. It's just like everything froze for a second. Oh yeah, hold on. I need to go back before I hit play again. I don't know where things are freezing, when things are not. It's really quite frustrating. I am now going to pull out my calendar. I'm going to take Mercury retrograde and I'm going to like cancel all of the commentary in that period. So, one step in the right direction is that I switched my setup. So, we have a new setup, and this setup seems to be more robust than using YouTube's own tools. And at the same time, I am running into all these problems. Anyway, as I was saying about Marder, I love Marder not because I always, how do I say this, can work through his work, although normally he's not writing about poetry, so it's a little bit easier. But his philosophy is fascinating to like follow how his mind gets there. And at the same time, I can't necessarily put words in it. And that takes a lot of work because I always have words around everything. So as you can see, I'm like hemming and hawing and making all these comments. So let's just get back into him because we're almost at the end. We're in the last 10 minutes of his talk. And yeah, I just want to get to the end. I want to not get to the end. I want to hear it. I want to.
Kill your balm, and its odors bless you. Bear your jasmine to the storm, and she will fling her maddest perfume, haply your summer night to charm. Right? It is after Jasmine is exposed to the storm or even killed that she will fling her maddest perfume in olfactory ecstasy, a trace of Jasmine's non-identity, of her being outside or beside herself. To commence an herbarium this way, right? And it's really on the first page of the herbarium made at Amherst Academy, along with a few other plants. Emily never puts only one plant on each page of the
Never.
herbarium. But to commence a herbarium in this way is to make a silent vegetal statement about the a priori failure of conventional herbaria, to make a herbarium against herbaria, and to face the faces of plants gathered there at the threshold of life and death, which is a mutable edge of vegetal being. The olfactory ecstasy of jasmine exposed to mortal danger is received as a blessing there where a play is deadly serious. Here's the final poem of the section. She died at play, gambled away her lease of spotted hours, then sank as gaily as a Turk upon a couch of flowers. She who died at play can sing gaily upon a couch of flowers, because they too die playfully, throwing themselves to chance haply, with a sense they release in their final hour irreducible to the biochemical signaling of danger. Herbaria are the visual tactile expressions of vegetal ecstasy. Jasmine spearheads this ecstatic being of plants at the olfactory level, which in Victorian poetry is closely linked to thinking. And so some parting words here. In a letter to Abia Root dated 16th of May, 1848, Emily Dickinson complains that, I quote, "There are not many wild flowers near, for the girls have driven them to a distance," right? All of these girls who are making their herbaria in the first letter, they have driven them to the distance, and we're obliged to walk quite a distance to find them, but they repay us by their sweet smiles and fragrance. And then she adds, "The older I grow, the more do I love spring and spring flowers. Is it so with you? While at home, there were several pleasure parties of which I was a member, and in our rambles, we found many and beautiful children of spring, which I will mention and see if you have found them. The trailing arbutus, adder's tongue, yellow violets, liverleaf, bloodroot, and many other smaller flowers. Nearness to flowers in space and in time is the grid of Emily's poetic herbarium. It is a nearness that is craved, desired to the point of becoming plant, but without erasing the distance to the many and beautiful children of spring, without that is negated. The saltarity of the plants and of oneself to oneself. Finding them, despite all the challenges, is finding oneself othered, vegetalized, moving against the strongest entropic current of life in a life. The older I grow, the more do I love spring and spring flowers, going back to that recommencement. The gathering and dispersal of an herbarium, collectively made with others, be they human or vegetal, are tokens of this distant nearness. The one and the many, life and death, day and night, plants, words, silences, seasons, faces, surfaces, senses, commune, threading into and out of one another on its pages. Far from a simple rebirth named spring, the chance an herbarium grants to whomever gains entry into it is that of a continuation of what is done and over with, a continuation without continuity, despite itself, like, in these lines, like the stem of a departed flower, which has still a rank, the bearer from an emerald court of a dispatch of pink. Thank you so much for your attention.
Wow. I am
Thank you,
so
Michael.
curious
Can
as
you
to
all
what
hear
these
me?
questions are going to be.
Okay, thanks. I have a specific question and then a broader question, but I'm going to save the broader question in case there are more questions from the audience, but I have a broader question in reserve. Sure. The specific question has to do with the matter of faces. So as we think about
Look how he
plants,
writes as he's
plants and
asking
fungi
and asks the
possibly
question.
having agency, consciousness, thinking, sensation. One of the categories I think that's been lurking in the room is personhood. Are plants persons?
Yes,
and at
yes,
least in
they
Greek
are.
and
Yes,
Latin,
they
the
are.
word person, persona or prosopon, means face.
Huh.
And you said, if I
Hold on. Go back there. This adds a whole new layer to that poem. See, you have to be a genius to really understand poetry.
and at least in Greek and Latin, the word person, persona or prosopon, means face.
Person means face. I did not know this. This would also explain some of the inherent difficulty in recognizing plants as persons. Now I'm super curious as to where he's going to go with this.
And you said, if I understood you right, a plant doesn't have face or faces. A plant is all faces. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is, do we wish to extend to plants, if that's the right verb, an animal-like quality,
No.
namely facehood or personhood?
Personhood is not face,
Or
is
when
not
we
animal-like.
speak of plants having faces, do we need to bend our understanding of faces and thereby personhood outside of our animal imaginary?
Yes, thank you, Charles, for this deep question. Yes, I agree with you on the link between faces and person, persona, which can mean a face, but also a kind of mask. And
A persona. How did I not think of
alluded
that?
in passing to this idea that traditional, conventional herbaria are not gatherings of plant faces, but more of plant death masks. And so there is a very fine line to walk here, specifically with regard to what I call vegetal ontology.
A herbarium as a collection of plant death masks. I'm, I'm, wow.
Between the figurative notion of plant personhood, specifically the plant as a figure of, as you said, consciousness, intelligence, thinking, and so on, and the backgrounded idea of plants, and plants actually spanning and practically deconstructing, as they do for all distinctions, the very distinction between figure and background. So the play, which also appears in Emily Dickinson's poems, one of the last ones I cited, the play that plants engage in and with is always a play between figure and background. They can never be reduced to what they appear to be figuratively. So the figure of a plant with its faces, the faces that they are but that they do not have, is irreducible to the plant, because the plant is also beside or outside itself, in this ecstasy of sending parts of itself outside of the physical material confines of its figure through biochemical substances released into the air, released by the roots, and so on. So we can neither completely zoom out, speaking about scales, spatial scales, we can neither completely
I
zoom
love this
out
man's mind.
of plant figures in order to appreciate everything that goes around them and that is still them and not them at the same time, at these interfaces.
And look how
between
excited
plants
he is
and
about
their
it. Look.
places. Nor can we zoom in and only pay attention to the forms, the specific material forms that have been so important also in the history of botany for the task of classification, and that appears specifically in these conventional herbaria that gather vegetal death masks and not so much faces. So to speak about being faces and not having a face is really to speak about this interfaciality of plants. And if we are to, again, to respond to your question, if we are to bend the category of personhood to accommodate plant being, we have to take into account this interfaciality of personhood. And then maybe then returning to ourselves, find that that interfaciality is not so far from what we call the human. It is just has been completely repressed, suppressed, and otherwise put out of sight and out of mind for millennia as well.
cswr.hds.harvard.edu.
And that's it. You just stop
Copyright
it there.
2025.
You stop it there. They didn't give us the. Oh my God, they just stopped there. I am. Harvard, no. Harvard, no. Where's the rest of the responses and questions? I am not happy about that. I am not at all happy about it. And there are no comments. I am not happy about that. I just want that on the record. I'm not happy about that. The questions was the part I was really looking forward to, because that was where Marder could get into more of the, I don't know, different essences. Okay. I want to do a recap, but I don't think I even could do a recap, because I still have to process everything that Marder just spoke about. Because first of all, as I said, we read Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life. So the concept of Emily Dickinson and her herbarium and her life and her poetry and such, I am familiar with. And yet, at the same time, it is still so elusive, because, as I said before, Emily Dickinson's writing in this, it was almost over time, as she got older, the I love that he went into the self-vegetalization, because that was something we also kind of concluded in reading about her work and of her life, how over time she became vegetal, like not vegetal in the sense of plantness. She embodied this other aspect of herself. And so to hear Marder analyze the poetry and understand the poetry through a whole series of different aspects, I absolutely love. And at the same time, recognize, honestly, the difficulty in the understanding and the coming to a deep conclusion around it because it requires a completely different way of thinking. Like it requires us stepping so far out. I and I'm glad for me this was really helpful in replacing the herbarium into a different kind of understanding or level because there are things that he brought up in the herbarium that I hadn't conceptualized. And even just this last conversation on persona and faces and masks and oh my God, there's so much to process here. So obviously we didn't get to Galliano, which makes sense. I want to dedicate a whole thing. Now I've got a new setup that seems to be working so well. I spoke too soon. It was working better. I have moments that it kind of, oh no, I'm back to it working better. So this is working better. I'm excited now. I have a few more things and quirks to kinks to work out before I can say that I'm going to be back 100% on plant consciousness commentary. I do want to state something relating to plant consciousness commentary and to the schedule and to what it is that we're doing. Where is this? Hold on. Next week, I will not be doing plant consciousness commentary for sure. So the next week is the 8th. And the reason for this is because I have the Damen Fest. For those of you that would like to get to Italy and would like to see Damen Fest is the best way and reason to come. Well, it's not the best. Okay, there's lots of really good ways, but it is a freaking great way. It's from the 8th to the 10th. I'm doing a workshop with dedicated to the mission of Damanhur and the reunification of the mother worlds and of the Orienting of the Trees project and why the Orienting of the Trees project is so important. So I'm very, very excited about this. But not only that, the whole fest is about missions and about the missions that Damanhur carries out for humanity and how either you can be a part of it or hopefully inspire you to find the people to which you will work on your own mission. So this is really all about life mission, your, global collective mission, what it is that it means to be on a mission and to reawaken humanity and how do you find the people with which you want to carry out this mission and the people you feel called to carry out this mission with. So very, very, very excited. It is going to be an awesome day. You can go to fest.damanhur.org to find out all kinds of information. We have the program there. We have, information on tickets, on how to come and everything like that. So wherever you are that you're watching this, please consider coming because it is going to be an experience. This is our second year. It's going to be even better than the first, and the first was pretty good to begin with. So just extremely excited about it. Anywho, on that note, I feel like we have done so much. We're getting back into the swing of things. So we will have plant consciousness commentary happening again, hopefully on the 14th. It'll be a little bit later in time because we do have, the 15th, the 15th, because we do have the first discussion of our Plant Wisdom Book Club. In the Plant Wisdom Book Club, we're reading If Women Rose Rooted. You are more than welcome to join it. It's a part of Seedling Sprouts. So if you just go to my website, tigrillagardenia.com/seedling sprouts or /Plant Wisdom Book Club, and you can find that too. So there is lots of information and it would be wonderful to have you read along with us. As you can see, we've read, Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life, which was another awesome and very, very interesting book. And I'm going to get to reading a bunch of other books like this one, The Nature Embedded Mind by Julie Brahms, which I just received and I'm very excited about. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit because I'm just in a good mood. Marder's talk left me inquisitive and thinking, and I'm excited. And then the next time we're going to watch Galliano, and we have lots of stuff to cover. We still have tons and tons of papers. You've asked me to summarize the papers rather than just reading through them, although there are a few articles that I do want to read together. If you have other suggestions or other topics you want me to cover in Plant Consciousness Commentary, if there are discussions happening around the world or different kinds of I don't know, theories that are coming out and you want me to analyze them and discuss them with you, please let me know. But remember that all of these conversations continue and actually grow even deeper inside of the Naturally Conscious community, which again, the link is in the show notes. It's just naturallyconsciouscommunity.com. And that is our premier and pretty much probably only online community for human plant relations where we have a whole ecosystem of things to support you. Plus the next plant consciousness, not plant consciousness, reconnect with plantkin workshop is going to be at the end of the month. These are a workshop series that happens the last Saturday. It's a 3-hour workshop the last Saturday of every month, and the next workshop is on plant guided shadow work. And wow, I mean, if it's fantastic, like this is really going to be, I'm going to outdo myself. If I don't say so myself. I already thought I had did myself with the enhanced plant communication that we just did. But if you go and you join that, which again, it's all on my website, you can just find it. You will discover, parts of yourself you just didn't expect and how to work with them in plantness, in a self-vegetalization, as Michael Marder said. All right, I'm going to stop rambling on. I'm going to go. I'm actually going to a theater show tonight. I'm very excited with some guests that are here, and we're going to have a good time. And then, we'll talk soon. Come into the Naturally Conscious community. Come join us. We're having lots of fun there. All right, everyone. Remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance.